Welcome back to session 2. We are going to be looking at judgment today. Some new surprises. We're going to introduce the idea of an altar. We're going to unpack the concept of judgment. And we're going to be developing awareness of our thoughts and feelings, that ongoing internal dialogue that's fundamental to this process. We're going to look at the differences between a response and a reaction. And we're going to look at thought watching, because that's kind of a fundamental skill throughout level 3. We're working on separating people from their behavior, that people are more than their behavior. We'll talk about that. As always, we will review last week's homework. We're always wanting to reassure participants that it's not about being right or wrong, but about exploring these issues for themselves, making it real for themselves. Sometimes differentiating between the two kinds of judgments of discernment versus condemnation can be tricky at first. I remember in one of the groups I was working on, we were unpacking judgment, and it was somebody, I think, who had probably been trained as a lawyer, had a really hard time saying, well, judgment's really important, and we do have to condemn people who have done awful things. He had a hard time unscrewing the idea that we can do it, that we can make decisions that are important to our safety without making the other person an enemy. So we'll talk a little bit about the two kinds of judgment. We're not talking about discernment, we're talking about condemnation. And that becomes clearer as we move through the material. Sometimes people who work for social equity feel a lot of anger and condemnation for the behavior of a society that hurts others. And boy, haven't we all felt that sometimes. This anger in the short run can fuel changes for the betterment of others. However, in the long run, this kind of energy can cause burnout and is harmful not just to the individual, but to the people they're working with, that kind of passion. And so how do we become engaged in social change without condemning half the population? An interesting question. And I'm hoping that this work can help people find that. Over the course of this program, people will also be encouraged to explore anger as a projection from their own sense of pain or injustice. We want to shift our understanding of anger rather than being something that's self-righteous towards something that is a message. That anger is a message, like a house alarm going off. It means I've been breached, something's wrong. I don't want to live with my house alarm going on all the time. It's going to wear me out. It's going to be unpleasant. I'm not going to be able to think. So I don't want to stay in that anger place. I want to know it. I want to recognize it. And then I want to explore it. So that'll be one of our approaches to anger. So the next thing we're going to introduce for the beginning of each session is we're going to introduce the idea of an altar. Altars are interesting. Some communities are very comfortable with altars and have them around their house in a very obvious and religious way. And that we can see them even in shops in Toronto. Some places will have a small altar when you enter the room. Other traditions, altars are less common or less comfortable. So we may want to introduce the idea of an altar as being a collection of objects that remind us of peaceful things. So when I look around my own room, I've got lots of photographs of places I've been and people I love. And when I look at them, a little piece of me remembers that. It resonates inside of me, and it creates a feeling of calmness and peace. The altar can have all kinds of things on it. These here are objects from, I'm going to just stop sharing so you can have it. This is part of something that's on my altar. This is a hawk wing that I found on a walk. That's a crow. These rocks are very important to me. They've come from places where my family has been, places where important things have happened. When I hold them, I can feel a memory come to me. when I look at that hawk swing, I have lots of good feelings about what that's about. For me, it's about perspective and nature and some of the happy places I've been. I've been given lots of objects for my altar. This is Kuan Yin. She is the goddess of compassion. See her very well. She is the goddess of compassion. We used to have one of her sitting in the Healing Journey office. She means a lot to me. It's not actually the object that means something to me. It is the ideas and the feelings behind the object. Here is an angel given to me by somebody. She's quite lovely. She's got a place for a candle. She's from Central America. I have another angel, also from Central America. Sometimes people will have icons from their religion that they grew up with. This is St. Francis of Assisi and Sister Clare. And what's rather neat, this is a traveling altar where somebody can fold it up, take it with them, and then wherever they go, they go to rest their head, open up that altar, light a little candle, and they're good to go. They're good to stay. Candles. A candle. I like this one because it's got glass so that it's not going to fall over or spill. And when we used candles at Wellspring, we changed from flame candles to electric candles as a safety issue. Always good to keep safety in mind. But as soon as we light a candle, the mood changes. You'll notice that. This was given to me, a card given to me by my mentor. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Isn't it beautiful? It goes from dark, and as you breathe, it lightens. I love that. That means a lot to me. And I have that on my altar because it reminds me to breathe. So the objects on an altar are not weird necessarily. They could be a flower. Flower makes a mighty fine focal point. We can use them as a focal point for meditation. We can use them as a place to create a healing room. We can have them around the house as a reminder, like a port key. I touch it or I look at it, it takes me to another state of mind. So it's a way of exploring these ideas. And I think removing it from sort of the esoteric sense. This is not weird. This is actually something you probably already have. If you've got a little cluster of photographs, you're probably doing that because it feels right. So I invite people to bring objects, if we're doing it in person, to bring objects to our circle to share with us for that session. I take it back with them. Sometimes people donate. Every Healing Journey circle I've done in level 3 has had an elephant on it, because an elephant is kind of one of our symbols, remember, to carve away all that is not elephant. And if it's online, we just ask people to bring, an example of an object that they would have or would like to have on their altar. Here we go. So that the opening exercises have just suddenly expanded a little bit, haven't they? So we're doing our relaxation. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Shiva Om Namah. I invite you to do that with the music. Just use YouTube. Divine Light Invocation. I am created by Divine Light. I am sustained by Divine Light. I am protected by Divine Light. I am surrounded by Divine Light. I am ever growing into Divine Light. We say it twice, once for ourselves, once for others. Talk a bit about that altar. And then we review the homework. And in the homework, what we're doing is we're reinforcing the practice. We're always doing that, looking for people who get it, people who are less comfortable with it, and having a place to explore it, really offering a safe place to talk about it. So for session 2, today we're going to look at judgment. And we want to understand judgment, not just as the judgment that we do to make a decision, but the kind of judgments that are going on all the time in our minds. This is why thought watching can be so important. We spend a lot of time in our minds judging ourselves and judging others. I often quip that it'd be really great that there aren't any thought bubbles over our heads, because if other people could read what we're thinking, it would not be pleasant. Now, the words that we can use here are confusing, perhaps. Let's be clear about what judgment is. Judgment is not the same as discernment. When judgment is discernment, this is a necessary and important kind of judgment that gets us through life safely. It's not condemnatory. Discernment is how we learn to make decisions based on facts. Examples of that would be, I judge this to be larger than that. I judge this to be better for this purpose than that. In cases like this, judgment focuses on the facts, not the person. This work is better than that work. It's not about the person. It's not this person with a lousy job and they're no good. It's just that this work is better than that work for the purpose at hand. Discernment involves objectivity, and it's not heated or driven by emotional charge. I often at Wellspring, I say you all use discernment to get here. When is it safe to get on the bus? When is it safe to cross the street? When is it safe to make that left-hand turn? All of you use discernment to get here. That is different than the condemnatory voice of judgment that most of us live with in our heads. Condemnation happens when the judgment is the result of a grievance and it has an emotional charge, and we feel it when we are threatened or when we feel offended. And this takes us back to the idea that there's a difference between a reaction and a response. What we're going to do, and this is a technique we're going to use throughout level 3, is we're going to find a simple, relatable story of frustration. We're going to deconstruct it into 2 columns. We're going to look at the reaction versus a possible response. I like to do this in a lighthearted way. You don't have to be heavy. And I like to use my own experiences because it takes me down a peg. It makes it very human. It's you can teach this stuff and still lose your cool. And believe me, you can. Do this work is not a guarantee, but at least we know when we're doing it. Reactions happen so quickly and without thought. It's important for us to slow the story down and to stop at various points in the story and ask the group how they would feel in this position. I like to break it down in terms of the physicality of it. How does your body feel when you're falling into a reaction? What are the thoughts that come up? How are you feeling emotionally? What's happening to you socially? And what's happening to you spiritually? So this is rather a silly story, but it's a true story. It's my story. A Tale of Two Chickens. I like to give these titles. I was a working mother for many, many years. I had young kids at school. And Fridays were kind of special in our house. It was the day we all got home and we got to let it go and relax, and it was always movie night. And it was something that, around Thursday, I'd say, oh, at least tomorrow's Friday. We have Friday's dinner together. So I would go, I actually did a relaxation and guided imagery group at Wellspring from 1 o'clock to 2:30 in the afternoon. Didn't work at the hospital on Fridays at Wellspring. And I got off at about 1:45, usually. Get in my car and I'm driving home, and there's a grocery store on my way, and I would buy dinner. I would buy dinner because on Friday I would run out of steam. There just wasn't, no more creative ideas for dinner. So I take my buggy and I go around and I grab a chicken, garlic bread, a bag salad. It wasn't nutritionally brilliant, but it's Friday. And a bag of 2-bite brownies, because it's Friday. Everybody likes to. I could start to line up and all the cashiers are busy. Now I know that my timeline is tight because I got to pick up my kids from school. This is the one day of the week I get to pick up my kids from school. This is exciting to me. They'll be waiting for me. They're little kids. So I start to feel tense seeing the lineups. My timeline is tight. And I begin. So it begins. We're going to fill it out in a chart. So I would have a chart, flip chart with me, and I would say, how am I feeling? Physically, I'm tense. I'm seeing the lineups. I know my timeline is short. What are my thoughts? Why aren't there more cashiers? It's like the store doesn't make enough money already. And then I can feel it, the stress. Doesn't anybody know I'm under stress? A terrible week. It gets worse. I'm standing now in the 12-item lane, and the person in front of me has 22 items in the 12-item lane. How do I know? I counted them. How do I feel? Capture it on the flip chart. What? Outrage. He's breaking the rules. I'm getting miserable here. Ignorance, slob, name calling. Want to notice the name? Name calling. He doesn't know he's in the wrong line. What moron is this? You know, how can anybody get things done? Buddy, there are rules. Hear it, can't you? I'm getting tense. My hands are getting cold. My heart is beating fast. I'm feeling like my brain is shutting down. And then I say, this always happens to me. Totalizing kind of reaction. Price check. Something doesn't have a price on it. The cashier has to make a price check. What am I thinking? Oh no, the kids will be scared. They'll be worried where I am. I'm going to be late. What if something happens to them while I'm in this bloody line? This cashier couldn't care less. She can't even see me. My heart is pounding, headache. And then I'm beginning to think I'm a lousy mother. I always seemed putting work ahead of my kids' needs. Notice that problem solving shut down, because when we are entering into a fight or flight response, that's not the part of the brain that's being activated. We're not thinking, we're feeling. Great, she's got the price, but now the tape breaks. Sheer incompetence, I think to myself. Dumb smacking teenager. She can't do this job. It's so simple. Just fix something. Oh, could this supervisor work any more slowly? I feel like screaming. I don't think I've ever been able to stand up for myself. Such a wimp. Oh no, and what about my kids, my girls? They could be kidnapped right now. So you see, it's escalating. And it's such a simple example. It's not a fancy example. But this is when we break it down into its little pieces. We begin to look at what's happening to us. We begin to see what a reaction looks like. Finally, I'm in the car. I got to go, go, go. I got to get out of the way. Oh, such a incompetent drive. Move, move. Oh, it's horrible. I get intense just thinking about it. I'm in a rush. My kids need me. I might even be thinking, oh God, they've been kidnapped. Something awful might have happened to them. Here's the guilt. I feel overwhelmed. I'm blaming myself. I feel stressed. I'm blaming other people even more to the point. I'm tired from the week. I'm not having a realistic, honest relationship with time. I put that in there because I think a lot of our stressors in life come from this sense that I can do more with what I've got, when in fact I can't. A dishonest relationship with time. So we begin to draw this diagram on the flip chart. The trigger that leads, and it's all pokey, we want it in a pokey circle, leads straight to reaction. And what we've done on the flip chart is break down what the reaction looks like all the way along, so that you can see that by the time I pick up the kids, I open up the door and I say to them, get in. And the kids sort of get into the car and I think, that's with mom, it's Friday, we're having a good time. It's interesting, groups usually really relate well to that story because it's so simple and everybody has been there in some shape or other. I also like it because it starts with something small, but it escalates into this huge issue of I'm a lousy mother. And that is often what triggers are about. We think it's about the stuff on the surface, but when actually it's about the guilt and shame of maybe not being the kind of mother that I wanted to be, or I thought that I should. So the next drawing that we do is reaction to a response. How am I going to shift to a response? So we want to look at strategies, and you're going to put this on the flip chart. Okay, let's go to other points along the way. All the cashiers are busy. I'm noticing the feelings of tension in my body. Oh, this is going to take longer than I thought. What can I do? Well, I'll take some low, slow breaths. See if I can counteract that fight or flight that's rising. So my response is, rather than blaming like it was the first round, whoa, this is busier than I expect. I need to take some deep breaths, try to relax my shoulders. I can feel myself tensing up. Chicken reset. 22 items in a 12-item lane. I'm noticing my thoughts. I'm getting judgmental. I'm getting stressed. As soon as I'm calling somebody a name, I am no longer seeing that person as a human being with their own story. I have now totalized them and said, this person's a jerk. I don't see any good in them. I am not empathetic or compassionate. I'm labeling. Recognizing that getting angry won't change if I get angry here, it's not going to change this. There may be a really good reason he's in this line. He may not have known that it was 22 items. That's happened to me before. Or it could be that the cashier had asked him to join her because her line was empty. That happens all the time too. So what's my response? Noticing. He's got a lot of items there. I wonder if he knows this is an 8-item lane or a 12-item lane. But then of course, last week this line is at the other end. Maybe the cashier asked him over. He's looking at me. I smile. Sorry, he says. I'll move as fast as I can. I smile back. I take a few more deep breaths. I'm going to have to pull up a plan B or C if this is going to take a long time. So by remaining calm, I'm already engaging my problem-solving strategies and recognizing this may not work out the way I hope. Price check. Okay, I can feel the panic. Notice that I'm aware. Awareness is allowing me to notice I'm feeling panic. Take some deep breaths. That's not panic. That's not going to help. Ground my feet on the floor. And I ask the group, what would you do to help you remain calm so that you could move to a response? So I get them to, I'm going through this on my own, but I would do this in combination with this group. Here's the situation. What would you do? So what would a response look like? Okay, looks like I may be late. What can I do? I'm going to call the school and ask them to look out after the girls until I get there. Or, hey, I can also call one of the other mothers. Or I can give up on this chicken and call in for dinner. More deep breaths. Let's see how this is going. Price check. Wow, okay. I'm going to watch the time carefully. Making nobody the enemy, not calling anybody names, asking the group to do problem solving. I'm not giving them the answers they're finding. Take breaks. Okay, wow, this time's really getting short. More deep breaths. Cashier looks stressed too, and I don't think that's going to help. She's just a kid. She's making minimum wage. Losing my cool with her won't help either of us. Yikes. Okay, time critical. I say to the cashier, looks okay. Oh man, you have no idea. This machine always has problems. I dread it when I have to work on this aisle. Okay, I may have to leave you before you get it fixed. I have to pick up my kids. So, problems being solved. Mutual compassion is being expressed. Driving to the school, changing the plans. Okay, this plan didn't work out. I need to try a different strategy next time. I'm going to use gentle curiosity and self-compassion. It's hard to meet all the needs of work and my family. All the kids care about is having fun. I can drop my agenda and go with the flow. I don't have to struggle. Kids get in the car. It's pizza night. The kids will love it. Let's talk about the kinds of pizza we want. It's a silly story, but it triggers a lot of stuff about childcare and being good enough and being a good parent. So the trigger is the chicken. Well, is it the chicken? It's time pressure and needing to be places. So you want to dissect what is the trigger. You want to be able to identify. When we have awareness that that is indeed the trigger, we then get the opportunity to make a choice. I can react, which is expensive emotionally and socially and physiologically, or I can work using those strategies of breath and grounding and awareness to come into a response which doesn't harm myself or other people around me. This is the go-to diagram. You're going to want to be filling this out. I put it at the top of the chart. Trigger, awareness, reaction, response. Taking a circumstance, a situation, what would the reaction look like? How would we bring it over? What strategies are you going to use to bring it over into a response? People usually really engage with this because they're such simple examples that everybody can relate to. The problem with reactions is that they're hard on ourselves and others, and they're so quick, they seem automatic. And the work that we've been doing through the levels of the healing journey so far is to become increasingly aware of what we're thinking and feeling. Awareness, that bubble of awareness, can give us choices in our behavior. By being aware, you can observe and catch yourself if you feel emotionally triggered. By becoming aware of a reaction, as it unfolds, you may have a chance to stop and process and shift. Or we may well be on our way into a reaction before we recognize it, before we can turn it down. We may not even notice until afterwards when we go home. And that's okay too. We learn in different rates, and different circumstances can change how soon we recognize that we're being triggered. It may be a retroactive thing. So noticing a reaction and turning it down. At what point might you catch yourself? Perhaps you'll be well into condemnation. You may hear yourself call the other person a name. That's important, even if you don't say it out loud. What it means is you no longer see them as a human being, but as a label. What can you do? And this is what we're asking people to really think about. What can you do physically? What can you do with your thoughts, your emotions? What can you do with the social interactions? What can you do spiritually in order to notice that reaction, turn it down? I asked the group to make a list. These are the kinds of things that come up, but we want it to come from them. Ground yourself, take a deep breath, count to 10, pull back, stop talking, walk away for a moment. Remind yourself this is not personal. The cashier's tape did not break just to make your life difficult. When we're in a place of response, we want to be able to recognize that too. We feel calm and rational, and we're able to engage our problem-solving skills. We kind of see the larger picture, and we don't feel the need to blame because we can see the larger picture. No individual is blame here. It's a series of events that have created any given moment. We can make thoughtful decisions about the next move, and we don't take the problem personally. I did not go into the 12-item lane with 22 items just to make my day. No, the story is bigger than that. Maybe he was coming from Wellspring and his wife is ill. There's always a backstory. We want a response to a situation. We also want to remind people that they've used this before. They've used the breath to bring themselves into the moment. They know how to do thought watching. And we know how healthy thought management. This is a level 1 skill. Acknowledge the thoughts, express and release them constructively, and then replace them with more healing or helpful thoughts and repeat. We also did in level 6 of level 2, we discussed forgiveness, which we're going to talk about in the next session, letting go of resentments, and we used the Garden Gate exercise. So you can ask the group for other examples of triggers. Waiting for a medical appointment and the secretary is rude to you. Everybody knows what that feels like. Someone cuts you off when you're driving. An employee who is consistently late. We ask the group to begin to think about what kind of triggers they have. And so what we want to begin to do is separate the behavior from the person. I use the example of when we work with children. We can correct children's behavior without a wholesale condemnation of who they are. Bobby, I'm not feeling very good about the mess in the kitchen. I appreciate that you're into cooking these days, but really, we're going to have to find some solutions about cleaning up afterwards. Versus, you sloppy, messy kid, how dare you leave a mess in the kitchen? What we do is separate the child from the behavior. The little boy or a child who wets his pants, we don't condemn the child. We say, oops, got an accident. What can we do about that? Let's fix it. Rather than, naughty boy, naughty child. Don't want to make the child feel ashamed. And so we want to take that into working with adults. We can dislike the behavior of the person while not condemning the person. We are all more than our behavior, and we all make mistakes. What is it? He who has not sinned, cast the first stone. Good luck on that one, because we have all had missteps. We all make mistakes. So in this session, we're going to start with our own judgments of others, and then we're going to move on to the tougher job of examining how we judge ourselves. Name calling, I do a little thing on name calling because I think that we do a lot of it. Name calling denigrates the other human being so that we can do things to them that we wouldn't want to do to a real human being. So in war, one of the first things that we do with the enemy is we ascribe them a name. Funnily enough, at least in World War II, it had a lot to do with food. Limeys, Krauts, whatever. And by doing that, you can perpetrate violence upon them without feeling guilty. So when you shoot somebody in the head, it's Fritz, or it's Kraut, it's other, rather than, well, actually, no, it's Mark, and he owns a farm, and he has 3 children, and a lovely one, and really works hard with his cattle. And suddenly you've got a human being, and the military doesn't want you to see the enemy as a human being. Consider how often we dehumanize others in order to justify our treating them, not treating them as we would wish to be treated. So that's what name calling is all about. Homework, judgment, criticism, resentment. This is going back and looking into the thoughts that we carry every day and to notice how much of it is this sort of unpleasant, ongoing, critical soundtrack. Oh, her skirt's too short. I can't believe it came out dressed like, oh, that child, how ill-behaved. That mother's way out of control. Look, that driver, I can't believe nobody on this road knows how to drive except me. These are the outrageous things we say. So we want to be able to look at those habits of negative thinking. We might want to think about 1 or 2 people that we resent. What is it about them that we resent? Making a list of the hassles. What does that do to us? And watching our thoughts as we go about life. All of the thoughts of criticizing others. Sometimes in many ways, we inherit that negative, critical soundtrack in our head. We grew up with it with our parents. And so we haven't really ever assessed whether this is the way we want to live. Competition, chance to look at competition. Competition is another way in which we label ourselves. It's the very act of winner loser. It means that somebody's going to get the short end of the stick. Doesn't mean that we can't learn and strive, but is it a way of, do I feel less when I lose? And do I feel more when I win? Really want to look at that. This is a tricky question, and I come to this with great humility. I think some people are ready to explore whether cancer has a meaning, and I'm not sure everybody is all the time. And in fact, I can look at this question some days and say, oh, and then other days think, no meaning, it's just horrible. So it is sometimes said that problems, even severe challenges like cancer, are gifts or lessons or opportunities. I would say, if it's a gift, it is surely wrapped in barbed wire. What is your reaction to that? Do you see potential benefits from your cancer or from other life crises mixed in with the pain? Are there examples of which this may be one in your life where an initially entirely negative judgment gives way to an assessment that a situation contains both unwanted and beneficial aspects? If you get a strong reaction from people to this, be empathetic. I get it. Not everyone's ready to ask this. Not everybody finds this helpful. But for those of us who do, even when we do find it like opportunity or gift, it's not like that every day. Some days are tougher than others. If people are feeling overwhelmed by the homework, always encourage them to use the very first one and use the others as their equal. We finish with a light circle.